Thank you.
No problem.
Anyways, so just a bit of a context of the problem.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you want me to just create like a system that makes like a book type sentence, so the sentences all make sense in like context, or is it just like random sentences that are like grammatically correct?
It's mainly random sentences would be fine. We don't need like to create very long paragraphs or anything like that. What's important is when you have like an initial seed for the sentence, maybe a word or two, and then based on that, the system will generate a sensible sentence in terms of grammar and meaning. And that sentence could be any word that is, any length really.
Yeah. I was also just wondering about the scheduling. So how would I go around coding this particular thing, like all of this? Because I said like path or schedule. Like if you're making like a web page, you have to use you make a HTML page, your login page, or if I was making like a project based on that, like CSS. Is there any sort of like set path that you make this? Like how would you make it? Like this, just sort of like the
This
context.
one sort of it's not like web project where you have lots of different components to work on, interface, backend, and then different languages. Mainly you need data and then the system. The data is you get like a large collection of text, right? It could be some books or some like Wikipedia articles or something like that. So you find the data set, and then you use machine learning to learn from that data set. And you would use the Python framework like Keras, for example, to implement the machine learning model or the system architecture. And you feed the data to that system, it will learn. So that's one stage, the learning stage or training stage. After it has trained, then you evaluate to see how good it had learned. That's the evaluation of the machine learning. After that, when you have your model and you can test that it had learned well, like with high accuracy on the training data, then you go to evaluate it on like some real examples, like to generate real sentences, and then see how many of those sentences generated are meaningful.
So I was just wondering about testing. Is there a certain way you're meant to test it? Like, do I have to put it through something, or is it like
testing?
A checker?
It's basically what you have for testing. For example, you would have, let's say, 1,000 sentences that is there that you wrote it off from some data that you've got, and you know these sentences are correct grammatically and meaningfully or semantically. And then for each sentence, you take maybe 1 or 2 words, the initial 2-3 words maybe, right? You feed that initial few words to the system, and the system should then complete the sentence. And then the completed sentence, then you can match to the actual original sentence that you had to see how much, similar it's been generated.
What sentence initially? Like, is it just like I have to put in some words? Does it have to match a certain sentence, or is it just going to be a random sentence that it generates?
For the testing, you can have like, say, 1,000 sentences, and you want to regenerate that, right?
So the sentences are already made, but I just have to get the system to remake them.
Yeah, that's ideally what it is, because if you create 1,000 sentences automatically by the system, then you have to go through them yourself one by one to see if they are grammatically correct and if they are meaning anything useful. It's not going to be perfect because language generation using this like AI stuff, it's good, but it's not 100% perfect. So it will have odd grammar mistakes or maybe odd words that make the sentence mean like quite confusing and so on. But we want to make it as accurate as possible, right? Yeah. So what you have, like for the whole system, you have a massive amount of data. Let's say you've got
where would I get this data from?
There are data anywhere. It could be just some scraping Wikipedia you could use. It could be from.
Aren't there grammatical incorrections like in Wikipedia where like maybe it's grammatically incorrect from the?
Well, Wikipedia is a source that you can collect the data and then you extract correct sentences from it, or maybe you will have to pre-process to clean it from removing foreign languages, markups, URLs, that sort of things, you know.
Yeah.
But the other type of data is Gutenberg database, which is like have books and novels and things like that as well. And they are cleaned up and good data as well. And I have some data set as well, or maybe tweets and things like that. So it's easy to get the data, you know.
Yeah.
You just need like lots of sentences, and it's very easy to get, you know, those stuff. And when you do a literature, you might find, you know, data set that's specifically developed for this sort of problems. But let's just imagine you have some data. Let's say you have 10,000 sentences, right?
Yeah.
And you use that sentences for the system. You might be using 70% for training, right? So you take 7,000 just to train the system on it. And you would allocate, say, 10% to validate the training process, right? So you would split your data set to training and validation and testing. So one bunch is for training, one bunch is to validate the training process, that to see how well it had learned before you start using the system in real application. And then the 20%, you would use it for testing.
So is it 10,000 words or 10,000 sentences that you want?
Sentences. Well, it doesn't have to be 10,000. You need to kind of determine how many sentences is good. Maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000, maybe 100,000, maybe 1 million. So normally with deep learning stuff, the larger number of sentences, the better it would learn. So if you
does it take a lot of time to process all that kind of stuff?
Well, from your own... Yes, it will.
Would it take days or
it could
just
take
hours?
weeks. It could
weeks.
Take or months, depend. You know, depend on the architecture, how complex it is, and how much data you're feeding through. So you will have to basically, when you do the literature, you will find, you know, the right or the suitable amount of sentences. So, but normally with the deep learning stuff, 1,000 sentences or even 10,000 might not be enough, might be very small to learn enough information from it. So you might have to go for 50,000 or 100,000 sentences. We might be talking about maybe 500,000 to 1 million words altogether, right? That might be a suitable number of sentences, okay? And the kind of one thing that you need to get it right from the beginning is how you build machine learning system or AI systems, right? It's very different from web development stuff, right? So I think what I would recommend really is read some of the like AI foundation materials or courses, especially deep learning for natural language processing, so that you can understand the pipeline of the project. Okay, so normally what we have in this sort of problem, we have a pipeline. You would start with identifying a data set, pre-process the data set, which is cleaning up the sentences, removing, you know, unwanted characters and stuff, normalizing the spellings and that sort of thing. So that's pre-processing steps that's going on. You might have to tokenize it to Word, and then you move to convert those sentences to special formats like numerical formats, so the machine learning can read it and understand it. Okay, so that's one of the first steps, the pre-processing, and then you move to build the model, which is like a machine learning model you build to see what algorithm you're going to use and how many steps this algorithm is supposed to go through the sentences, what pattern to look for, and that sort of thing. So you build that model, that system architecture, to learn from the sentences. And then you would feed your training data. So your whole data you split to different parts: training, validation, testing. Okay, you separate those into groups. You feed your training to the architecture that you have, and your algorithm would learn from that data. And then you evaluate that learning process to make sure that it learned as much as possible, right? It's like, for example, if you yourself getting taught how to speak French, you would go up to maybe for a 6 months course, you learn different grammar, different vocabularies and stuff like that. And then you would put that in practice to see how much you've learned, you know, by talking to somebody or making dialogue to see how many sentences or how much dialogue you can have with the language, right? So you evaluate your learning. And the same thing with machine, you evaluate the machine learning to see how much it had learned. And that gives you accuracy rate. So we want to try to make the accuracy rate as close to 100% as possible.
How would you measure the accuracy rate?
Again, when you do the reading and the study, you will find like
Yeah.
codes already in the Keras library that will basically feed your training, your validation, and what has produced by the system, and that gives you a measure, of accuracy. There are like functions in the Keras library that you just feed your data through. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, and accuracy you could go for. Yeah, there are different matrices to measure that accuracy. Sometimes it's just basically average accuracy of say, well, I got 100 sentence, how many of them is correct, how many of them is wrong, and then you do the divisions and stuff. And that's very simple, basic way to do it. Others, they would be using things like they call it the F measure, and that uses like recall precision matrices. They slightly different things. So the recall would say how many of the sentences has been kind of processed and how many of those processing has been done correctly. And you're using those figures together to do the divisions and stuff to give you this F measure. And that's more robust measure for accuracy. Okay, so when you do the literature, those are the sort of things you would need to learn so that you get things correctly and you do the project properly. Yeah. So once your model, your architecture is being trained and evaluated, and then you would move to test it with the test sentences that you've got so that you can see as if you are giving that sentence to a real application or real world system to generate some data. Imagine if you're building this system for a chatbot system, right? When a user typing something, asking the bot some questions, then the system will generate an answer to it. And we want that answer to be grammatically correct and to be meaningful, right? So the testing then you do, obviously you don't put it in a real application like chatbots, a dialogue system and stuff like that. You just test to see if you are giving it some words and you wanted to generate a sentence by the system, how good is that sentence in terms of meaning and grammar? Yeah. And then you basically evaluate that test accuracy that you have.
Right.
And that's the pipeline. But basically, before testing, when you do the training, you would have there are a lot of parameters that you have in machine learning, like the algorithm. And when you tweak the parameters, the algorithm would learn better. So the training process would involve lots of tweakings and trial and error and that sort of things.
So I'm just entering like certain starts of sentences, and then it's going to output a sentence, but it's not like a chat box or anything. It's just I've already like made the parameters and all the variables and stuff. It's just pre-made by me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you just basically like feed some words or something, and then that will generate sentences. So you don't need to put it in chatbots or anything like that. But you might just have a simple interface where you would enter a few seed words and you click generate, and that will generate a sentence for you.
Is every word like is it meant to create a sentence with all those words in? Like if I can put like 5 words in, random words, is it meant to create one for each sentence, for each word in that I inputted, or is it just like all 5 words meant to be in the sentence?
It's like the seed words that you call it is the kind of the initiation for the sentence generation. If, for example, you have a sentence to say, tomorrow night I'm going to the movie and watch this film, right? Then maybe your seed word is tomorrow night and then the rest of the sentence will be completed by the system. So those few words is the seed for the sentence.
So every sentence has to contain those words.
Well, yeah, because you give it a seed word, and then that would basically help the system to know where to start to create a sentence.
Yes, but you wouldn't have like 5 random words and then 5 different sentences for each of those random words. It would just be all 5 of the words in the sentence.
You could generate maybe 5 sentences. You could build it in a way where we generate maybe 3 or 5 sentences using those words, and then you will see which sentence is most relevant to the one that you want. So imagine if this is used in a chatbot, and someone asks questions is what movie is available tomorrow, and your seed words would be movie tomorrow available, for example, and you generate 5 sentences based on that, right? And then you'll see which one is closer to the question that was asked.
Right, But
Okay.
Default wise, it's just got the sentences. I mean, the words have to kind of make sense together when you input them.
Yeah. Normally, you don't deal with words. You would deal with characters. So I'm expecting that when you do your kind of your reading and studies, you will find that word would not be so efficient way of making them. The characters would be more suitable. So you might feed in, I don't know, 10 characters, and then the system will generate a sentence like of words and stuff like that based on the characters. So my concern is, if you what's your course? What program are you studying?
Computer science.
Okay, so did you do any Python programming, any AI?
Yeah, last year.
Okay, and what sort of what was involved in that module for Python?
Well, it was Internet of Things, and I also did one past that as well.
All right. Okay. What else did you do? You haven't done any AI sort of module?
No, we're doing it this year.
Yeah. Okay, that might be a bit helpful. Introduce you to some of the like main concepts in AI and machine learning and stuff, because it's very important to understand like how you pre-process data for machine learning, what sort of algorithms available, and what frameworks, and how you would prepare kind of the pipeline in the project, and what sort of sort of evaluations that you need to do with machine learning. Those kind of stuff are quite fundamental.
Yeah, we'll be doing that this year, so yeah.
So you might need, because the module is going like slowly week by week, you might need to do a course that would speed up the process for you, because there are things that you might have to learn a lot faster than the module would teach you.
Yeah.
And basically what you learn for this project will help you with your AI project, because the skills you would learn here, you would apply to your assignment in that module. So if you learn things quickly, like for this project, you will find that for your AI module, you already know a lot of things and you're able to like to do the work for your assignments and that. So it kind of complements each other in a way.
Yeah.
But I would recommend, if you look on Coursera, a lot of courses are made free because of this crisis, and you might find some useful courses on machine learning, especially on deep learning and stuff, and natural language processing.
Mainly it's Keras that I think I learn how to use that framework.
Yeah, basically Keras is a kind of, imagine if you do Python and you're using maybe PyCharm or Jupyter Notebook or something like that to write your system, right? And Keras is a bit like that. It's just a framework that is a library with all the machine learning algorithms in it, and you have the codes that you can call it, but they're not specifically about which problem to work on, because you can use Keras for computer vision, for image processing, for NLP stuff, for lots of different things. Knowing how to code in Keras is a good start, but knowing the domain itself, like NLP domain, and what sort of things involved, what kind of, especially in language generation, to know what kind of algorithm is suitable for the task, and how you pre-process the data, for the machine learning. Those are important stuff that you need to know. That's why I recommend doing courses on natural language processing using deep learning. And Keras is this library that has all the deep learning stuff in it.
Yeah, I'll make sure to go on a course on
And I think with deep learning, naturally, because it uses a lot of mathematics and algebra, calculus, that sort of things, having some background on those stuff, it would be very helpful for you.
Yeah.
Because when you're reading papers and stuff, they would talk about some formula that are based on algebra, and the data, the sentences that you're feeding through the algorithms, they're not just words and characters in English or other languages. They are numbers, really. You have to convert the characters and words to numbers, and those numbers, they become vectors. A vector is just like a list. It's like a single dimension array, really. But then you do a lot of operation on that list, and the operations they're all linear algebra operations and calculus. So that's why understanding those things as well it will help you understand what the machine learning is doing. Now, when you're building something in Keras, for example, you build a layer in the system to let's say learn the first patterns or the first initial set of features from the sentences. You're basically going through the list of numbers. You have the vector, and you apply a mathematical operation on the vector that it will identify the useful words or useful characters that it can help the machine learning to learn from the data. And you need to understand what that operation does. Right? And especially when you're reading a paper, they might be talking about certain, functions and stuff that are algebra stuff. So if you don't understand it, then you wouldn't know what the paper is talking about, and you could become confused. So that's why it's two things is already to learn. I don't think AI module will teach you any of that mathematical stuff. So therefore, you need to find a course where it teaches you about algebra and calculus.
Yeah.
And there are lots of good courses on Coursera, on Udemy, on Khan Academy, and that sort of places to kind of give you an introduction about things. And you just need an introduction really, because you're not going to build algorithms and do anything mathematical on pen and paper. You just need to understand what they are. And then Keras itself has all the implementation of those equations and formula. So you don't have to write them from scratch. You just call them through Keras, and you just need to understand what they do.
Yeah.
There's a good website as well, which would be very suitable and relevant maybe for you. It's I think it's just called DeepL. Let me just have a look. It's like a blog thing that teach people about machine learning and deep learning stuff.
What's it called?
Machinelearningmastery.com, and they have, I think they have got a book. There are like startup courses and stuff like that. It's very large. It covers lots of different things in machine learning. You just need to make sure you navigate through it to find the stuff relevant to deep learning and NLP stuff. So it's machinelearningmastery.com. The author is Jason Brownlee. So it's good to start with that. They've got a lot of Python kind of codes and implementation of different things, and explain things in quite simple, straightforward fashion. So that could be a start, one resource that you should use. But Coursera is also good because they've got like short courses and very focused on specific things. So you might find a course on algebra, one on calculus, one on machine learning, one on natural language processing, and you do them. And they normally last maybe 10 hours or so in total. Yeah. You could finish them within a week or two. So it's useful to start with that as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
Okay. So the project idea is to build a system that can automatically generate sentences, something using some like a novel architecture based on deep learning. And the architecture in deep learning is it depends on you, like to see what kind of layers, what sort of functions and stuff to use to make it good. But you're reading about the area so that you understand what algorithms generally work well for this problem, so that you don't go and start with an algorithm that's completely irrelevant to the problem and you waste your time.
Yeah.
Your literature review should inform you about the type of work that that's involved in this one, and then the courses and stuff like that you do is to give you the technical skills to build that system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all fine. Yeah.
Good. Who is your supervisor?
Sharon McDonald.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I had a client for another project. She's the supervisor as well.
Yeah.
And I on the project I have put a few links as well to some papers and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the anthology one and the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Any questions or anything?
I'll just have to. I have to put this all into notes. So I'm probably gonna have to send you an email that you have to like sign off. I think. So I can my definitive brief.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's gonna work exactly. Do I just send you an email and you respond, or do I just?
I
You
think
have to
what
like.
you can do is if you put your things in OneDrive, you would have
Yeah.
access to OneDrive, I think, and then share the document with me. Then you can see that who's edited the document, right? So then I just add my initial to it, and I'll confirm by email that I've done it.
Yeah. Well, I'll start the end of that next week. I'll just write this up today and then send it in
No,
next week.
that's
All
fine.
right.
Fine.
All right. So thank you again.
No problem. But I think let's have a meeting updates maybe once a month at least, just
Yeah.
to see how things are going and keep me in the loop as well.
So when do you want to see me next month? Is there a set date you want? Or?
I think just sometimes in about 4 or 5 weeks time, if you get in touch and arrange the meeting, and maybe just another 20 minutes, half an hour to see where you are, and if it's any direction or something you might need, for example, just to support.
Yeah, I'll see you end of the next week. I'll do some Corsair stuff and other stuff. Yeah.
Okay. All right then.
Thanks.
No problem. Take care.
Take care, you
Bye.
too.
Bye-bye.